stop. Just stop for a second. How many people woke up today and told themselves, today is different? And then life happened. The same distractions, the same excuses, the same slow drift back to comfort. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world on fire. Plague, war, betrayal, loss. And he didn't just survive it. He wrote about it. He grew through it. He led through it. These are his lessons. And if you let them in, really let them in, nothing about the way you live will stay the same. 1. The emperor who sold everything. Rome was dying. Millions were dead. The treasury was empty. And the people already broken could not carry one more burden. Most leaders would have raised taxes. Marcus Aurelius opened the doors of his palace. Golden cups, silk robes, jeweled vessels, every luxury an emperor owns. He put it all up for auction. 2 months of selling his own comfort, so his people wouldn't have to pay for a crisis they didn't cause. Nobody asked him to do this. He chose to, because he understood something that very few people in power ever truly grasp. You don't own your position. You are trusted with it. And in a moment of crisis, that trust is either honored or it is broken forever. Look around you today. The boss who takes a bonus while laying people off. The leader who protects his comfort while others suffer. They failed the same test Marcus passed. And here's the harder question. The one meant for you. When things get difficult, what do you hold on to? And what do you let go of? 2. The book written in a war tent. Marcus never wanted to be a soldier. He wanted books, philosophy, quiet rooms, and long conversations. History didn't ask him what he wanted. For nearly 15 years, he commanded armies on the Danube frontier. Cold, brutal, relentless. A war he never started and could never fully end. And in the silence between battles, in a military tent, not a palace, he wrote what became Meditations, one of the most important books in human history, not written in comfort, not written in peace, written in the worst season of his life. He put it plainly, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He didn't write that as a clever quote. He wrote it while living it. So let me ask you directly, that obstacle in front of you right now, the rejection, the failure, the door that won't open, what if it isn't a wall? What if it's the material? What if the person you're meant to become can only be built here? In exactly this difficulty, the man who endured 15 years of war and still chose to grow, wrote a book that 2,000 years later, you are still reading. What are you building in your hardship? 3. Your anxiety is not coming from out there. By every measure, Marcus Aurelius had every reason to be destroyed by anxiety. His most trusted general betrayed him and declared himself emperor. His children died. Millions perished within his borders. Enemies pressed from every direction. And yet, in Meditations, he isn't writing about those disasters. He's writing about his own mind, his own judgments, his own fears, the stories he allowed himself to believe. He understood something most people spend a lifetime missing. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The world outside doesn't create your suffering. Your interpretation of it does. During the pandemic, millions of people stayed home. The commute disappeared. The crowds disappeared. The noise disappeared. And the anxiety stayed. Because it was never about the commute. It was never about the outside. It was always the mind. You cannot change the storm, but the window you look through, that is yours. That has always been yours. 4. The most powerful man on earth had trouble getting out of bed. Let me tell you something. Nobody talks about Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, was not naturally disciplined. He admits it himself in his own private writings. Never meant for anyone to read. He writes, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work. As a human being, am I made for this? To lie under the blankets and keep warm?" Read that again. The most powerful man alive, arguing himself out of bed every single morning, feeling the same pull toward warmth and stillness that you feel, fighting the same inertia. This matters. This matters deeply because the world has sold you a lie. That discipline is a personality type, that some people are just wired differently, that the ones who rise early and stay focused were simply born that way. Marcus Aurelius, with the weight of an empire on his shoulders, proves that lie wrong with one sentence. Discipline is not a gift. It is a decision, made imperfectly, made daily, made against resistance, every single time. The book that changed millions of lives was written by a man who had to convince himself to get up and write it. You are not the exception. Rise anyway. 5. Be hard on yourself. Be gentle with everyone else. 175 ad. Marcus receives word that his most trusted general has declared himself emperor. Avidius Cassius, a man Marcus had relied on, trusted with armies, perhaps even admired. Now, a traitor. Marcus marched east to confront him. But before he arrived, Cassius was killed by his own soldiers. And Marcus expressed regret, not celebration, not relief. Regret, because he had wanted to pardon the man himself, to look him in the eyes and choose mercy over punishment. He then pardoned every member of Cassius's family, every co-conspirator, every follower. He had the power to destroy them all. He chose something harder. Here is the lesson that stings, especially for people who are working on themselves. When you build discipline, when you start holding yourself to a real standard, there is a quiet temptation that grows alongside it. The temptation to judge others. The fitness person who becomes insufferable about what everyone else eats. The disciplined professional who loses patience with colleagues who aren't as organized. Self-improvement that turns outward as contempt is not growth. It is just a different kind of weakness. The harder the standard you hold for yourself, the more patient you must be with others, because you know how difficult the right path actually is. Keep the strictness pointed inward. Let the world outside receive your patience. 6. Love what happens to you. Marcus Aurelius never chose to be emperor. At 17, he was adopted, groomed, handed a destiny, with no say in the matter. He could have spent his entire reign resenting it. The philosopher who wanted a quiet life, trapped in a role that gave him none. Instead, he wrote this: "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. The fire does not complain about what it's given to burn." This is a more fatty love of fate, not tolerating what happens to you, not enduring it through gritted teeth, loving it, transforming it, using it. The person born into poverty, who builds wealth and then uses it to lift others. The athlete whose career ends in injury, who becomes the greatest coach the sport has ever seen. The entrepreneur whose first company collapses, who carries those lessons into something greater. They are all the fire. Your circumstances are not your sentence. They are your fuel. What looks like a wound can become the source of your greatest strength. You do not get to choose what life throws into you. You get to choose what burns. 7. You could leave life right now. Marcus Aurelius buried 5 of his children. He watched the plague take millions. People he knew, people who had stood beside him. Death was not an abstraction for him. It was Tuesday, and he chose to write about it. Not to spiral, not to despair, but because he understood, with absolute clarity, that the awareness of death is not a dark thing. It is the most clarifying thing there is. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do." And say, and think. Sit with that. What have you been postponing? What conversation have you been avoiding? What work keeps getting pushed? To next week, next month, next year? What life have you been saving? For later? Later is not guaranteed. It never was. A cancer diagnosis realigns a life in a single afternoon. A near miss on the road ends a decade of resentment before the car stops moving. The pandemic gave millions of people a glimpse of the same question Marcus lived with every day. What am I actually doing with my time? Most people answered it and then forgot. Don't forget, Marcus Aurelius carried an empire on his shoulders. He buried his children. He fought wars he never wanted. He faced betrayal from men he trusted. And still, he wrote, he forgave, he led, he loved the life he was given, even when that life was brutal. You have today. That's not nothing. That is everything. Don't waste it.